Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled People Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. Smug Karen takes my car keys because I can't possibly be the owner. Earns herself a ride in the back seat of one of our county's finest. After that, am I the jerk for giving the family heirloom to my fiance instead of my daughter? And after that, IT director is not being helpful? Time for some malicious compliance. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen does not get to take anyone's car keys. Can't take your car keys if you don't have a car, Reddit boy. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Smug Karen takes my car keys because I can't possibly be the owner. Earns herself a ride in the back seat of one of our county's finest. This is just a throwaway because I don't care to stick around for long. But this incident was so stupid that I can't really help but share the story since my friends keep telling me to. What I find most weird about this is that my car wasn't anything super special. It was just a yellow 09 V6 Chevy Camaro with black stripes. When I bought it, it was super cheap because the passenger side door had been smashed in somehow and there was already 130,000 miles on the odometer. But the title was still good somehow. No idea why, nor do I really care. It was sold to me via a proxy. All I know was the car looked like a good deal, so I bought it. A friend of mine who works in auto body fixed it for me. He said that the most damage was done to the door itself, and I just needed a new door, and after he made a few tweaks to make sure everything was straight. Together, we managed to find a door at a salvage yard that was the same color. A little work, and the car looked almost new, and it became my fun ride to commute to work or drive around when I didn't feel like using my other car. I didn't do any modifications to it. I'm not one of those guys that's into speed or crazy mods. I liked the car because it looked cool and the gas mileage wasn't so bad with the V6. In fact, I wanted a V6 Camaro because I heard that they're usually in better condition than the ones with a V8 because people drive the V6 more for looks than power and don't gas it as much. I drove that Camaro for a year before running into a random Karen at a supermarket last year in September. Those places tend to draw Karens in regularly, especially in the state that I live in. I've seen many Karens, but was lucky to hardly ever be noticed by them. I was shopping for some stuff to make dinner and was about to head home when I found the Karen with her son all over my car after exiting the store. I'm guessing the kid was around 4 years old, and his mother was taking pictures of him sitting on my hood while the kid kept smiling and gleefully saying, "Bumblebee." Yes, I understand the reference and I've heard it all before. I don't like people messing with my property, and I told the kid to get off. The Karen took one look at me and told me to mind my own business. Now I'm 29, male, but I have a bit of a baby face, and my casual clothing made me look like a teenager. So I guess to her, I couldn't have been someone who would have anything to do with such a nice car. That's actually a pretty common car. I told the Karen to get off my Camaro, and she bluntly told me that there was no way it was my car because I'm too young. I pulled out my keys and hit the alarm button on the remote. That made the alarm start blaring for a second, and her kid jumped off while screaming and crying because I'd frightened him. But rather than pay attention to her crying kid, the Karen came running at me full speed and managed to shove me hard enough that I fell over. The next part is a bit hazy. I got a bump on the head, and that crazy Karen just started screaming at me. She stepped on my arm and pulled the keys from my hand before I really had a chance to react. Though she didn't really hurt me much. She was not very big, only around 5'2" or so, and a twig, while I'm over 6 feet and 170 pounds. When I got to my feet, she was comforting her crying kid and telling him that I was a mean person. I told her to return my keys, but she got hissy and said that there was no way the Camaro was mine. I again stated it was, and I would only give her one more chance to return my keys. She didn't. Instead, she handed them to her kid, who proceeded to start playing with the buttons on the remote and unlock the doors. I had enough and got my phone out to call the police. When the Karen saw I was on the phone, she started screaming and charging at me again. Though this time I easily dodged her, and she nearly fell on the asphalt and screamed that I had attacked her. I never even touched her and said as much out loud. The 911 operator was listening to everything that was going on, and I quickly told her where we were while this insane woman was still screaming at me, and 2 cop cars had shown up before long. At this point, the Karen had locked herself in my car with her son and started the engine to run the AC. I explained everything to the police, and they knocked on the window of my Camaro to get the Karen to open it and give them her side of the story. She claimed the car to be hers and that I was just some stupid broke teenager that had tried to take it, then bragged that she had taken me down. The officer asked if that meant she had shoved me over, to which she bluntly said yes. I told the police to look in my glove compartment. In there was my insurance card and a copy of my registration, and they could compare the name on my license. When the Karen heard that, she got out of the car and finally admitted that it wasn't hers, but then said there was no way it could be mine, and that she just took the keys from me to find the real owner. That quickly earned her some shiny new bracelets, and she was screaming into the back of a police car. The parking lot had cameras, so it was easy to prove the attack, though I only really got scratches, a bruise on my arm where she had stepped on it, and a small bump on my head. After the Karen was taken back to the station, they found out that she was on something, which explains why she was so nuts. I, of course, pressed charges, though my testimony wasn't really needed since the police had both CCTV from the parking lot and the audio from my phone call. It turned out to be the Karen's third offense, and she got 2 years in prison. Oh, and her kid was taken from her. The whole incident made me rethink owning the Camaro because it had been a magnet for people that bothered me a lot, so I sold it. Basically, I got everything back I had into it anyway, so I broke even. I doubt I'll want to own another sports car again. Edit. I know that the Karen lost her son because of social media. I found out who she was and looked into her social media profile. She had already blogged her woes, calling me a monster because the authorities took her kid over a little misunderstanding. I don't know about the rest of you, but if the authorities took the kid that fast, she was already on their watch list, and I know she was on something because it was mentioned in court. My testimony wasn't needed, but that didn't mean I wasn't there to watch. I took time off work just to go. She gave me a death glare when she was sentenced. Edit 2. Yes, people, there is an '09 Camaro. It was the first year of that generation, and the car that was actually used in the first Michael Bay Transformers movie. Edit 3. Seems I'm more mistaken than I thought. My memory is not that good since I sincerely thought my Camaro was an '09, but it was just actually bought in '09 and was listed as a 2010 since model years are always ahead of actual years. I gave my friend who worked on the car for me a call, and sure enough, he says it was a 2010, and even told me he thought it was weird I figured it was an '09. I'm so confused, but then again, some of the people I know couldn't even remember what year their car was half the time anyway, and I sold the car pretty much right after the Karen incident and tried to forget as much as possible. I feel like a complete idiot, so I'd at least like to thank everyone who called me out on that. I would also like to address one more thing. Many here are talking about how risky it was that I had a bump on the back of my head when the Karen knocked me over. You're not wrong that I probably should have gotten it looked into, but growing up, I was getting hurt with all the other kids all the time. Bumps on the head happened a lot, and we just powered through it. I guess I figured that day was no different. Those calling this story fake, I really don't blame you. It would sound fake to me if it didn't actually happen to me. It's actually stupid how often Karens make a fuss over other people's stuff, cars being one of them. I didn't even really want to post here, but my friends wouldn't leave me alone about wanting to post on Reddit since it happened. And seeing how many similar stories there are, I find that Karens trying to take other people's cars is entirely too common these days. I mean, before the whole Karen thing became a meme, I didn't hear of any of this crap happening at all, unless it was related to some sort of crime. It's almost like now that the internet has exposed them, Karens have just decided they didn't need to hide what they are anymore. Either way, I hope this sort of situation never repeats with me because it was enough. Speaking of cars, if you could have any car in the world, which would you choose? Please let us know. How about a green 98 Saturn with windows that don't roll down? Don't hate the player, hate the game. Am I the jerk for giving the family heirloom to my fiance instead of my daughter? I, 36 male, have a 16-year-old daughter named Jane. Jane is a great kid and was really close to her mom until she passed a year ago. My mother gave one piece of her jewelry to her kids before she passed. I was given her engagement ring. I've been planning a proposal to my girlfriend, Laura, who's 30, for about 6 months now. Jane is from my previous relationship. Her mother and I were never married. I've been dating Laura for about 5 years. I told Jane I was going to propose. She was happy about it and asked to see the ring. I told her I'd be using my mother's ring, and Jane looked upset, so I asked her what was wrong. She said she had assumed the ring would be hers since she's my daughter. I explained the ring was given to me and there are other heirlooms, small items like rosary beads, that she can have. For clarification, I do have the money to buy a ring, but the sentimental value of this ring is why I wanted to use it. Laura also helped us take care of our mom while she was sick and they were close. I proposed to Laura with the ring and she said yes. After this happened, Jane cried to her uncle, my brother, about it, and he understands both points. His wife thinks I'm the jerk, so do some other family members. I obviously can't take it back from Laura when I've already proposed. Am I the jerk? Edit. The ring was given to me, not Jane. Laura has known my mother her whole life. Our mothers are best friends and have been hinting we should get married as long as I can remember. Update. My daughter and brother decided to call my father to come to my house and talk to me. Laura was out to dinner with her friends. My daughter and brother explained to my father their thoughts on the situation. I stayed quiet while they explained their point so my father could really hear what my daughter was saying and so I could also hear her out. My father is a Marine veteran and very blunt. My father stopped them and said he's heard enough. He said my mother would have wanted Laura to have the ring and Jane isn't showing the maturity to receive an heirloom right now. He told her he's disappointed in her entitlement and that she needed to get her attitude in check by his next visit. He also reminded everyone Laura's been family for years, even before we were together, even if it's not by blood. My daughter said yes sir and isn't happy about the outcome, but accepts my father's saying this is what my mother wanted. After reading all of your comments, you're the jerk. Of course, you can speak to your fiancé and tell her that you hurt your kid's feelings and made a mistake. You communicate with her and buy her a new ring. Before reading your comments, I was like, not the jerk. Your daughter's feelings are valid. It's a family heirloom. But you are correct too. It's your ring. Your fiancé was close to your mother. But your comments made it clear that you're the jerk. He's trying to justify his actions because OP thought he would come on here and everybody would be on his side, only to find out that it seems like 95% of the people here think he's the jerk. I'm actually surprised and glad that people are calling him the jerk. I expected every comment to be like, not the jerk, she's not entitled to it. You're the jerk. The ring should have been Jane's. Find out if Laura would accept an exact duplicate of the ring and exchange that for the heirloom for Jane. Otherwise, I predict you will have a very unhappy daughter who will resent both you and her future stepmother for a long time. If I were Jane, I too would be deeply hurt that a ring that belonged to my grandmother was given to a non-blood relative. If the ring should have been Jane's, then her grandmother should have given it to Jane. But she didn't. She gave Jane something else and gave the ring to her son. Jane isn't entitled to something just because she wants it. You're the jerk. How does a 5-year relationship, mother of an SO, become more important than a 16-year bond with a grandma? Sentimental jewelry is typically passed down from generation to generation, and you basically skipped over your daughter. Doing this soon after your mother's passing makes you an even bigger jerk. There was no reason you couldn't have just bought her a different ring instead of one with sentimental value to your daughter. This decision has certainly injured your relationship with your daughter, perhaps beyond repair, as you've made sure she will resent you and your fiancé. Don't be surprised if in 2 years she moves out on her birthday and goes no contact with you. ETA. Just read your comments about planning to have more kids with your significant other. You have essentially picked your significant other of 5 years over your daughter and plan to have kids that will go on to inherit a piece of jewelry that means so much to your daughter. If you do actually wind up having more kids, don't count on your daughter wanting anything to do with them because she will likely resent them as being the proof you chose a potential family with your significant other over your existing family. Second ETA. OP has clearly been doing some damage control. A few things I would like to clear up for new viewers. OP didn't mention jack about Laura and him growing up together or their moms being best friends until after I made my initial post. The relationship between the significant other and one's kid is completely different than one with the child of a family friend. OP only vaguely mentioned Laura helped care for his mom without giving any other details. Nowhere in his original post or comments did OP say anything about his mom insisting that he proposed to Laura while on her deathbed. OP said his daughter asked him not to propose with her grandmother's engagement ring and he did it anyway. He completely disregarded the feelings of his daughter, even though he could afford to buy Laura an engagement ring without breaking the bank. Legally, OP did have the right to do what he did, but morally, he was a major jerk. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his daughter? Please let us know.
Call me crazy, but if Grandma wanted her to have the ring, why wouldn't she have just left it to her? Stop acting like a Karen, Jr. Let's continue.
IT director is not being helpful? Time for some malicious compliance. I'm an IT director, male 51. though I'm the only IT person in a nonprofit with 45 plus employees. The place I work is a toxic nightmare only because of the CEO. Everyone else is awesome. I didn't want to leave my job and my coworkers, but I was left with no choice. I was quiet quitting for several weeks while I interviewed for new positions. I took home all personal items from my office. The job market for an IT person of my caliber is like Candyland right now. I quickly found a new position, and the day they officially welcomed me to the new company, I submitted my 2 weeks' notice. Granted, I had been considering giving no notice and leaving with a fire and brimstone approach, but I read a lot of articles about resignation letters and avoiding any negativity, so I backed off and just gave a boilerplate 2 weeks' notice resignation letter, nothing positive, nothing negative. A coworker who wears several hats was tapped to be the interim director. I met with that person and the COO to develop a transition plan to avoid as much chaos as possible. They mostly work in social media and marketing, but during lockdown, I had trained them to be an emergency IT replacement in case anything happened to me. Though they will be okay for a few weeks, they simply do not have the experience to do all of the things I do: network administration, systems administration, help desk, web development, app development, etc. I happen to be a unicorn of sorts, an IT generalist that has done it all. We met with the CEO in a cramped office to review the transition plan. We immediately stated that the interim IT director would not be able to do their old job while they're running IT. The CEO is a complete narcissist and deeply arrogant, while also being completely incompetent and lacking in the most basic IT skills. She immediately pushed back on the plan, as basically this was not her idea. She rejects everyone else's ideas 100% of the time. I tried to speak up and advocate for the COO and the interim IT director, as I've been doing the job for 5+ years, so I know the reality. There's no way they could possibly do IT and their old job. She literally wouldn't let me finish a sentence. She wanted to see a checklist of my job duties. There are literally hundreds of pages of documentation for my role, which is not really possible to summarize into a checklist. Everyone in the meeting had been emailed a disaster recovery/business continuity document that I wrote for my role. We referred her to the document that everyone else was looking at. She complained that it hadn't been printed out for her. M'lady, everyone else in the meeting had their laptops open with the document. I simply turned my laptop around and gently pushed it towards her. She flew off the handles. She wanted a printed copy. Also, she said, "You are not being helpful." I was literally in the meeting to be helpful. There are hyperlinks galore in this document, so a printed copy would be useless, but I tried to oblige by taking my laptop back and started to print it. Before I could finish, she was standing next to my chair and was saying, "Are you going to move?" I guess she was trying to get past me to go to the printer. I said, "I think what you meant to say was, 'excuse me,' as I scooted my chair forward. Not being helpful? You have no idea what that looks like from your IT guy." I said, "Okay, I'm done," and went back to my office, wrote a new resignation letter, went right back to the meeting and handed it in. Instead of leaving in 2 weeks, I will be leaving in 1 week. The CEO's jaw dropped to the floor. She was speechless. She just sputtered as I closed the door behind me. They already begged me to go back to 2 weeks' notice out of courtesy and professionalism. I just told them that courtesy and professionalism is a two-way street, and they hadn't earned it. I'm going to barely work for the last week. Instead of tying up loose ends, I'll just not quite get around to finishing stuff while I watch them scramble. Good luck installing new software or updates on all the computers that require an administrative password. Good luck handling the media coordinator who regularly creates network storms with his antiquated studio equipment. Good luck onboarding new staff with their accounts, passwords, and equipment needs. Good luck helping the CEO use her smartphone every day and helping her search for emails in her inbox with over 25,000 unread messages. Good luck with the security systems that I installed and maintained for 3 years. Good luck maintaining 10 websites, 7 of which I personally developed and maintained. I will just sit back and watch the show. Malicious Compliance is now the main course in a delicious meal seasoned with the tears of a bitter and competent CEO. Am I the jerk for leaving my wife's house when she told me she owned it and not me? My wife is 35 and I, male, am 35. We've been together for 7 years and married for 5. My wife is the primary breadwinner in our house. We also have a 4-year-old daughter together who's more attached to me, an important part of our situation. My wife works at her dad's company and is usually gone to attend to all business work and is only at home max 2 weeks a month. I'm not much of a fan of it, but still support her career. As a result of her frequent absence, my daughter and I have formed a special bond with each other. A few months ago, my daughter made a drawing with just her and me, and I ended up putting it on my social media. When I put it on my social media, my wife was out of state, and when she saw it, she wasn't happy at all and called me and shouted at me, saying that I should have asked her to draw her in it too. I straight away told her she was overreacting and to please not spoil the mood. She continues to bring it up every few days. Well, yesterday in the morning, I told her, let's take our daughter to the mall, but she straight away said no, as she would be very tired because she had to go later at night to the airport and didn't want to travel anywhere right now. She had to leave post-midnight. She could have rested when we would have returned. I told her I'd take her alone and she could rest. While we were talking, she said that she works her butt off and I live at her house and will be bonding with her daughter, and that it's very unfair that I get to make more memories with our daughter while spending her hard-earned money. I left the house because she views me as someone who is with her for a house or her money. I don't make nearly as much as she does, but I still make enough. She makes around $300,000 and I make $105,000, which I don't think is a bad amount, but she still sees me as someone only interested in money. After she said that, I left and said it is her house, and as I am not welcome, I'm leaving and went to my parents' house. Now she's calling me, saying I'm being a jerk, I'm overreacting, and she's telling me to come back. Am I the jerk for leaving my wife's house when she told me she owns it and not me? Look, she made choices. This is the career path she wanted. Her relationship with your daughter is what she chose to make it, so that part of it, you're not the jerk. But this money business? Okay, does she normally make power plays like this? Granted, she's pulling in some serious green, but you're not doing badly either. Why this play for dominance? And why are you living in daddy's house when you're both making enough to buy a home of your own? Something is seriously wrong between the two of you, and I think your father-in-law has something to do with it. Do not leave your kid in the middle of this. This will make her life horrible, and both of you need to get out of daddy's house and into one of your own, far away from these power plays which will destroy your family. You're not the jerk. OP. I think I will be calling her and saying if she wants us to live together, we will be moving out and buying our own house, or buying the house from her dad and having both of our names. Not the jerk. You're a team. You're married. Maybe she's starting to realize she's away a lot with your daughter not drawing her, and she's taking her guilt out on you. Not the jerk. Right now, she's upset that you're making the memories and she's being forgotten, literally. Your daughter made a drawing that mommy isn't in, and the day you left and left your daughter there, mommy dropped her off at her parents' house and went to work. It's a sad situation that she has created for herself, but she needs to understand that it isn't your fault and she has no right taking it out on you. As for the house, you pointed out that she doesn't own the house either, and maybe she needs to be reminded of that you both live in her father's house for free. Y'all need counseling. Talk with her, and maybe she can pencil her family into her schedule for some counseling. Can't believe how easy everyone here is going on the wife and her attitude. If the roles were reversed and the husband was the breadwinner acting like this, y'all would be telling her, OMG, leave him. Red flags, take your daughter and get as much child support and alimony as you can from this deadbeat. But as usual here on Reddit, you're all just making excuses for why this wife Zilla is acting like a monster, and you wonder why rich men refuse to get married these days. Every time my parents hound me about finding a good woman to marry, I tell them the same answer. Thanks, but I'd prefer not to risk losing half my stuff. Then my sister calls me selfish, says there are so many single mothers out there who would be so happy with a man like me. I could be the father figure to their kids. I tell her, yup, the same ones who wanted nothing to do with me in high school because they were too busy running around with the jocks. Oh, you've got 4 kids now from 4 different guys? None of them are in the picture and you work delivering pizza for Domino's? Guess you shouldn't have rejected all the guys like me who had a good head on our shoulders. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. Shut my mouth and get out of your bar? Okay. I used to work at a bar as the only female security. This bar got in legal trouble all the time. Fire marshal closed them on some busy weekend nights for being way too over capacity. The liquor board had pulled their license once already for over-serving and serving people with pretty obvious fake IDs. I was one of the new security hired to help resolve all this. It was so bad, we had to be trained by a government ATF person and get a card to prove we knew how to spot and stop over-serves and spot fake IDs. I think the real reason they hired us was to have scapegoats on the ready for next time they did this. So I worked there a while, doing my best. The owner's wife was the worst. She was always drunk, always had her friends in the bar, and bent the rules for them. She thought she was Lady Jesus, and we should all be kissing her feet because she was the owner's wife. I mostly stayed out of her way and had no issues, but many coworkers complained about her. One night, some dude gets sick on the way to the bathroom. I cut him off. He ends up getting escorted out by his less drunk friends. I notice a man sitting at the bar watching this. He had creased slacks, a jacket indoors on a summer night, and no drink in his hand at a busy meat market dance club. I started watching him and noticed the badge under his jacket. Aha! He was here to watch for overserving. A little later, a woman came to the bathroom, drunk enough to need to hold on the walls for dear life. I cut her off. She screams at me, then goes into the bathroom and tries to wash off the giant black Sharpie X from the back of her both hands. I warn her that she will be kicked out of the club if she continues. She screams again and staggers out of the bathroom. About 5 minutes later, owner's wife is in my face screaming. The woman I had cut off was one of her friends, attending a bachelorette party in the VIP section, and I was supposed to somehow magically know she was a VIP. I was also apparently supposed to break the law for her because she was a VIP. So she and I start a screaming match where I inform her that her husband had hired me to make sure that the law was followed. I also started to inform her about the police officer at the bar, but she screamed in my face to "Shut your mouth and get out of my bar." She fired me on the spot. I didn't bother waiting to see if her husband agreed. It was known she wore the pants. I complied, I shut my mouth and got out of the bar. I walked past the cop, still sitting at the end of the bar near the bathrooms where the screaming match had taken place. I made eye contact with him, gave a slighted nod, to which he responded by looking at the boss's wife, rolling his eyes, and smiling at me as I left. They got shut down that night for overserving the bachelorette party. This time, they went out of business because of too many strikes against them. Am I the jerk for not wanting to finance my husband's kid's life outside of our home? My husband and I have been married for just less than 1 year. We've been together for 7 years. We have kids from previous relationships. He has 3, a 15-year-old son, a 13-year-old son, and 12-year-old daughter. I have 1, an 8-year-old son. My son lives with us full-time, his daughter spends every other weekend with us, and his 2 sons live with their mom in a different state. A little background. When we first got together, his kids were obviously much younger, and my son was a baby. I pushed and asked for a relationship with his kids and their mothers, but eventually stopped pursuing the idea, as it seemed as I was the only one interested in the possibility. Fast forward to now, the kids are much older, and I have 0 relationship with their mothers. The boys have the same mom, his daughter has a different mother, and barely have a relationship with his kids. It's not hostile or negative, it's just not there. I'm pretty much invisible. It's not ideal, but it could be a lot worse. In our home, I'm the breadwinner. It's always been that way. I'm fortunate enough to have a great job, extremely supportive parents, and a very privileged upbringing. My paycheck pays 80% of our bills and all of our household living expenses, trips, and extras. My parents are extremely involved with my son, and he spends plenty of nights and weekends with them. We have a great relationship, and the life my son has is nothing short of a blessing. Here's where the problem comes in. Because we got married, I was expected to provide for the 3 other kids at the same level I provide for my son. This is coming from parents who have never made an effort to get to know me, my family, or be involved in our lives at any point, despite my attempts to do so. At first, the request started off small, and I was inclined to think that this may be the start of a relationship building, so I obliged. And then it exploded. I was expected to pay their way for summer vacations, summer camps, new laptops, TVs, video games, sports team fees and equipment, you name it, I've been asked. I finally put my foot down as my family is planning a reunion trip, and I was expected to plan the dates around his kids' availability and finance the trip, about $1,300 each. I said no, it was not pretty. This year and every year for back to school, my husband was tasked with buying the back to school supplies. Not a problem, I encouraged it. He provides financially for the kids through child support, weekly allowance, and whatever else comes up. I've never had a problem with the money or with him providing for them, never. The difference this year, all the kids want designer shoes and bags and are looking to me to make the purchases, and I don't want to. In summary, Am I the jerk for not wanting to provide the same lifestyle for my husband's kids as I provide for mine based on the information above? Not the jerk. It's your husband's and each of their mother's duty to provide for their respective kids. Anything you choose to do is a bonus and a gift, but don't feel obligated to do anything you don't want to. They are the jerks for treating you as a wallet instead of taking advantage of the chance they had to have another loving adult in their lives. Not the jerk. Petty me would tell your husband that if he has that expectation, then the costs of the household will have to be revisited and he will need to increase his contributions to 50-50. Not the jerk. In case you haven't caught on yet, your husband is a toxic grifter. Behavior like this: my husband is furious and doesn't understand why I will not provide for his kids the way I provide for mine. He constantly starts fights and makes slick comments about things I do with and for my son. He has stopped spending time with my son, claiming that I wouldn't do that with his kids, so he doesn't see why he should with mine. This is unacceptable and will negatively affect your son if it hasn't already. You owe it to your son and to yourself to remove this man from your home and your life. Your husband let his mask fall off right after you got married. Do you think that was a coincidence? He thinks he has you trapped. Divorce him now before it's too late. You could end up paying him alimony and supporting his kids anyway if you stay in this marriage much longer. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know.
So, why did you marry this guy again? Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.